Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, my dear brothers and sisters everywhere. Welcome to tonight's special event. We are honored here tonight to have with us Dr. Hatem Al-Haj. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. And we are very grateful and honored to have him. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Hatem, for accepting our invitation and joining us tonight in spite of the very, very busy schedule that you have.
Jazakumullah khair, may Allah reward you for inviting me.
Hayyakallah. My dear brothers and sisters, obviously many of you already know Dr. Hatem Al-Haj. He is a scholar, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. I personally benefited a lot from him. He's also a member of the Assembly of Muslim Jurists in North America. He's one of the lead 7 scholars on the council. He's also a pediatrician by profession, who has been in the forefront of this battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. And he is in state of New Jersey, right, Dr. Hatem?
Correct, yes.
So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. Recently, of course, last week, we heard the news that he himself tested positive, which obviously concerned and devastated many of us. We were very, very worried, but alhamdulillah, it seems that Dr. Hatem, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, is recovering very well. So alhamdulillah, it's great to have you with us tonight. Jazakallahu khairan, inshallah. So to begin with, Dr. Hatem, obviously we're going to be asking you a wide range of questions. For the audience that we have, look in the YouTube chat box. You will find the link for the Q&A, so you can post your questions there, inshallah ta'ala. So make sure that you post your question there and wait for the answer. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Obviously, we have a wide range of questions to ask you, Dr. Hatem, as a scholar. Fiqh, religious questions, as well as maybe some medical questions that we have. First thing that I would like to start with is if there is any update. This whole event or this whole situation has been very fluid. Things are changing. CDC every day comes up with some new guidelines. So is there anything anything new within the past 24 hours that you would like to bring to your attention that we should be aware of?
To proceed. Well, in the last 24 hours, I don't think that there is something substantially different in terms of the CDC and in terms of the public health agencies and their recommendations. I am aware of some of the states issuing stay-home orders, yesterday and today. I guess Florida and Georgia, and so some other states are following suit as well. But not in terms of the recommendations of the CDC. There has not been any change in the last 24 hours.
So one of the matters that we had personally noticed, and we may have discussed this, is that we see that this is affecting certain age groups more than others. And this question, obviously there is a medical explanation for this, if there is any that you can share with us. Alhamdulillah, children under the age of 9 seem to be, they're not getting this virus. There's a very, very slim chance that they would get it, and if they do get it, it's not as lethal with them as it is with the older age group, 50 and above. So is there any explanation for this, or do you think this may have some sort of
it's a physical explanation?
Yeah, is there some
well, there are presumptions. There is nothing established, but it is presumed by some people that maybe the receptors, the lung cells, the receptors that the virus attaches to in the lung cells are not developed in children. So that does not allow the virus to attach to those receptors and basically invade the lung cells. So it's, being underdeveloped in this particular case is a privilege, I guess, an advantage.
Alhamdulillah. So does that mean that parents should we be concerned? Should we still be very careful? Should children be playing outside or interacting with other children? If they are at a lower, yeah.
I think it is reassuring that children are not affected as much as adults. Like in terms of the parents and their are a lot more concerned about our children than we are about ourselves. So I think it is very comforting that our children, even if they get the virus, will not suffer the same severity or they will not be hit by the virus the same way adults do. So that's comforting, but it does not mean that we become completely relaxed and put down our guards completely, because children, number one, could still become infected. In fact, I may be taking care of somebody who has. So they may become infected, and also if they have any health conditions, the course of the disease may not be particularly predictable for them. And in addition to this, they are silent carriers. If they don't become affected, they may carry the disease to others. So if your child contracts the disease, they may pass it on to your parents, to their grandparents, for instance. And in this case, certainly that would cause a lot of harm. So yes, we are less anxious about the children, but that does not mean that we completely put down the guards when it comes to children. They're mixing with each other, but may carry the virus, may, let them carry the virus and pass it on to others who may suffer like a severe disease.
So obviously, a lot of people have this question on their mind, Dr. Hatem. Many of your students and people, even the du'a that know you, this is the first time I'm seeing you after you shared with us the news last week. Many people, this whole idea of testing positive, having COVID-19 seems to be like they treat it like they may think of it as a death sentence. Your words were very comforting in one of the groups when you sent us the message. For those of us, in spite of the fact that we thought we were supposed to be there for you, to reassure you and to comfort you, and but Jazakallah khair, you're the one that actually provided that for us. So what are the chances, I guess, well, not even chances, how should one respond, right, to this? Suppose that someone finds out that they have symptoms, or they actually find out the result of their test. What is your advice as a religious and a spiritual leader, as well as a medical professional? How should we deal with the whole thing? One, I guess there are two parts to this question. One, what should we do? I mean, should we take it lightly? Should we just be very, very concerned and scared? And in the case anyone, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and preserve everyone, contracts the virus or shows some symptoms, what is your advice to us and the community?
First of all, the virus is not basically another flu. It is worse than the flu for sure. But again, at the same time, it's not as lethal as some people make it to, or think it is or make it look like. It is certainly worse than the flu. You could say it's like 4 or 5 times worse than the flu. But it is one of the coronaviruses. It's one of the viruses that give you sort of flu-like symptoms, flu-like illness. And about 80% of the people will not even need inpatient care. So they will do okay at home. Some of them will be asymptomatic. They will not suffer any symptoms. Some of them will have some symptoms. Some of them may have worse disease than others. But 80% of the patients who will become infected will not need to be hospitalized. 20% will need to be hospitalized. 1/4 of that 20%, which is about 5%, will need ICU care. So they will need to be admitted to the intensive care unit. About 2% may die. And certainly you could hear different numbers. I'm just giving approximate numbers, but you could certainly hear anywhere from 1 to 4%. And it is possible also that these numbers are high because we're not testing everybody. But if we start to test everybody, the fatality rate will go down because there will be, the denominator will become much larger because we're testing everybody, and that will cause the fatality rate to drop. So it is not a death sentence, and it is a bad disease. It is not really as simple as the flu. It's worse, but it's certainly not Ebola, and it is not a death sentence. So the one thing that makes it, particularly concerning and frightening is not the fatality rate as far as individuals are concerned, but the widespread. So, it spreads fast and it can affect large, sectors of the community. And it could result in the whole healthcare system breaking down. And if that happens, that would be a full-blown crisis, because if the healthcare system breaks down, it means that you will go, with appendicitis, for instance, and not find someone to take it out. You'll become septic, and then, it gets, so things of that nature could start to happen if the healthcare system breaks down. So that's the danger of this disease. When it comes to us as believers, and I just posted something about this yesterday, it has to do with your feet being on the ground, but your heart up in the heavens. Feet being on the ground, you have to be aware of the diversity of Allah's decrees, aqdar Allah al-kawniyya. Diversity of Allah's decrees, the diversity of world conditions, the diversity of human conditions. This will make you responsive, will make you alert, will make you responsive, will make you conscious, mindful, and will make you also take the right precautions and make the right provisions. As we always talk about, the Prophet ﷺ and the Hijrah, and how the Prophet ﷺ, made the most perfect provisions and took the best precautions and so on and so forth. At the same time, in Allah ma'ana, Allah is with us. He remembered us. He was always conscious of this. And that is, being aware of the diversity of the world conditions around you and Allah's decrees and so on is called al-farq, or differences, being discerning. But Jam'a basically is to ascend to that singular unity of the source. We believe in the singular unity of the source of all of this. And it is all in his hands, and the pens have been lifted, and the pages are dry. So that, while you are taking care of yourself and the people around you, and you're taking precautions, and you're shopping for masks or whatever it is that you want to buy, take every precaution you can take, but at the same time, you have complete certainty that the pens have been lifted, pages are dry, Allah is in control of all of this. And if you are one with Him in purpose, and if you are together with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then whatever befalls you will just be good, and will be welcomed, and you will accept it, and you will make the best of it. I think that this is توكل مع الأخذ بالأسباب. أعقلها وتوكل. Back to this, back to the very few words where the Prophet ﷺ was asked about by a Bedouin man, should I tie my camel or put my trust in Allah? He said, tie your camel and put your trust in Allah. They're not mutually exclusive. You're tying your camel with your hands. You're putting your trust in Allah with your heart. Your heart is full of trust, acceptance, surrender, delegation, and you are working, your feet are on the ground, and you're working to basically repel harm and bring about good to yourself and others.
I guess this brings us to a very, important point, which is, is this a test of belief and yaqeen? Is this a test of our certainty and faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or is this a form of punishment for maybe some of the things that we failed in doing, or some of the things that we may be engaging in? So this is a question that a lot of people have been raising. Is this a test? Is this a punishment? If it's a test, then of course, how do we pass this test? And if it's a punishment, then how should we respond to it?
Yes, and they're not mutually exclusive. It could be both, and it could be, more of a test for some people, more of a punishment for some people. It could be both for one person as well. Everything is a test. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He who created life and death to test you. So life and death and everything in between is a test, and everything is in between, life and death. So this is certainly a test, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gives us a lot of opportunities here. A lot of opportunities. It depends on what you make of it. Could it be a punishment? Yes, and I do understand why people are hesitant to say this, because that, it doesn't sound politically correct, and it doesn't sound particularly tasteful. But yes, good things could be a punishment, and bad things could be a punishment. You could be tested by good, by wealth, and it could be a punishment in the form of a ni'mah, or a benefit, or something that you celebrate. But it could be a punishment because Allah knows that you will fail that test. And if you fail the test of as-sarra, the good, you're much, you're not worse than someone who passed the test of ad-darra. There is no comparison, So it depends on what you make of it. Someone can fail the test of as-sarra, the test of good. Someone can pass the test of ad-darra, the test of hardship. And what matters is not the type of test. What matters is whether you pass or fail. And we should take basically everything that happens to us in this life, we should take it as a test. Everything, from the time you wake up in the morning until you go to bed, is a test. So take it as a test. How do we know if this was a punishment for us? It depends on what you make of it. If it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it fixes your life, if you had a problem with some issue, with some problem, like, some addiction, some people have different addictions, some people have a problem with porn, for instance, and they can decide to to quit. Everybody is at home and there is no chance to do that, and so they can decide to quit, and they can, and if in 2 months' time they actually quit and completely recover from this, then they are in a much better place than they were when this crisis started. So it depends on where you will be after this crisis ends. Students of knowledge have a lot of, if you're working on memorizing the Quran, if you're a student of knowledge working on memorizing the Quran, this time of uzla or self-isolation, our predecessors have always talked about the proper mix between uzla and khulta, mingling with people and isolation. And there is a proper balance. But most of us, most of the time, we're not actually striking that proper balance. We're too involved with people all the time. So this may be a chance for us to reflect and to have some, forced uzla, so that we can have, time for ourselves to reflect and basically to do the things that we have failed to do. Finish the memorization of the Quran, write your own book. Even if you're not in the caliber or capacity of writing a book, write a book, write for yourself. Like you have studied, rephrase a book. It will make a huge difference to your understanding of the subject if you write a book or rewrite a book in your own language. So there's a lot of opportunity for everybody, inshallah. And I'm not making light of it. I'm not belittling the hardship, and I'm not making light of it. But at the same time, without making light of it or belittling the hardship, let us try to make the best of it, inshallah.
For the students of knowledge out there, obviously this could be a golden opportunity to catch up on many projects, many plans that they had. I didn't have time for this, I didn't have time for that. Maybe a great opportunity for them to catch up. However, some of them feel like, this has been very hard as it is. It may not be the fear of death or the unknown, but rather the missed opportunities, being in the masjid, being with their fellow community members, attending Jum'ah, attending Jama'at. It has been really a very painful reality for some people, just from a completely like an emotional and a spiritual point of view, right? So I'm not praying in Jama'at anymore. I'm not going to the masjid anymore, and those durus and halaqat that we used to do. So what word of advice do you have for those of us who find this a very difficult reality to deal with?
Well, I'm not denying that it is difficult, and I'm not denying that the uncertainty makes it difficult for us to sort of to accomplish, anything. Or for some people, the uncertainty makes it pretty difficult to do anything or to make any progress in any respect. But once again, that may be our problem. We just need to have more certainty that Allah is in control, and all we can do is what we should do. Like, everything that Allah had asked of us in this life is doable, is attainable. So we just, what we need to do is what we can do. And what we can do is actually a lot. If we remove all the distractions and remove all the worries, because there is not much that you can do. This is much bigger than you. This is much bigger than the U.S. government. It's much bigger than China and the U.S. And
it literally brought the whole world to its knees. We're just,
Everybody has, and it is actually a good time, to reflect and to visit those stations of humbleness and, poverty, brokenness before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a very good time to reflect on our fragility, our vulnerability, and to show your brokenness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, at the same time, you are comforted by the fact that, you are the servant of the one in control of all of this. You are Abdullah. You are Allah's servant. And He is in control of all of this. So, you know, you're working for, you are, you know, an agent of the one who is in control of all of this. Just do your part, do what you are told, and He's in control. Things will
So,
be better, inshallah. It's just
so
like,
if we can't, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, no, you know, so let's say people are asking, okay, now I used to go to the to the jama'ah, you know, for the reward. Now, would I get the same amount of reward if I was to pray at home with my family members, or for, let's say, a newlywed, for me, you know, for the if the person prays with his wife, or if she prays with her husband, or maybe individuals who pray with their roommates, do we get the same amount of reward that we would have gotten if we were to pray in a masjid?
Yes, well, the Prophet ﷺ said, إذا مرض العبد أو سافر كتب له ما كان يعمل صحيحا مقيما. So when the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes ill or travels, he will have the same reward granted to him that he used to get when he was well and at home or in his hometown. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not shortchange you, will not take away any reward from you because of something that He had decreed for you, or that He had decreed on you. So you will get your reward, and keep in mind that, you know, these rituals are meant to refine our character and to elevate our hearts and purify our hearts. And the travel by the hearts is basically a lot more effective than that by the body. So you could travel to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the heart at a much higher speed than the body. How many days can you fast? But if you really become established in some of these stations of the travelers, you know, manazil al-sa'irin, these maqamat of suluk, you become established in your reliance, your tawakkul, your yaqeen, your certainty, your poverty, your faqr, your brokenness, your inkisar, tawbah, inaba, your, you know,
Even yaqadha, like awakening. Now, some of us are
absolutely.
experiencing
Wait,
awakening right now, you know. SubhanAllah.
absolutely. You know, so if you become, and I'm not saying that we will become established, because that's a long shot, but you know, progress in these stations, make some progress. Certainly, like those who are established are not really frazzled or touched by this at all.
So there's an opportunity for us, even in this particular situation, instead of, you know, some people were saying maybe now we get to train ourselves or improve our sincerity, right? So are you going to, being consistent with your prayers? Are you going to pray on time? Are you going to pray your nawafil and your sunan? Are you going to get up and pray when you don't have, let's say, when you don't have people around you, you're all alone. So hopefully this will, inshallah ta'ala, get us to appreciate some of these lost privileges that we have. Maybe we'll, inshallah ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soon gives us the opportunity to go back into his houses, into the masajid, and go back to, inshallah ta'ala, visit Mecca and Medina and perform Umrah and Hajj, inshallah ta'ala, maybe we'll appreciate it, more. There was a statement that I always wanted to ask you about, and I've been really, the famous story of I think Hatem Al-Haj. I don't know how authentic it is. Shaqiq al-Balkhi, when he asked him, كيف قومك يا حاتم, and he said, نحن قوم إذا ابتلينا صبرنا وإذا أعطينا شكرنا. you know. So
كلاب بلخ عندنا.
no,
هذا
so yeah. So he said, he in response he said, well, that's how our dogs behave. When you give them, they're thankful, and when you deprive them, they're patient. So he said, as for us, نحن إذا أعطينا, right, صبرنا, is it, or آثرنا غيرنا وإذا ابتلينا شكرنا. So some people are saying, are we, is this now an opportunity for us? Obviously different people are being tested at different levels. You have people who themselves may be at risk and they're really, really scared. You have people who contracted the virus or the infection. And then you have people who have, loved ones who may have, been, who may have caught the virus. And then you also have people who suffered, a loss. I myself yesterday, I think the closest it hit right now is, the mother of my maternal aunt's husband passed away yesterday morning in Maryland. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her. So obviously people are being tested at different levels, right? What's the proper response of a believer at this moment? I mean, obviously, again, the test can get even worse. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us and protect us. But in case someone is afflicted with a calamity at any level, regardless of the intensity of it, what advice do you have for us right now to really prepare ourselves so that we can get the reward of those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ.
Well, the idea here is that feeling of entitlement that we have is the problem. I think that we're talking about sabr and we're talking about loss and we're talking about all of that stuff, although certainly all of this has been, is established in the Quran and the Sunnah, the concept of sabr, because when it comes to the human condition, certainly a lot of people have this jaza, excessive fear, and sort of what we call, like in medicine, adjustment disorder. They cannot really adjust to different conditions or to calamities, and they have difficulty with adjustment. But the believer does not have this sense of entitlement, and it is easier said than done. But, the bottom line is your vision is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What if he takes it back? I mean, are you entitled? Is everyone entitled? So God forbid, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. But are we entitled to everything that we have? Are you entitled to your air-conditioned room that you're sitting in? Are you entitled to all the books that are, showing behind you here? And are we entitled to our vision? Are we, all of these faculties? I'm talking to you now. Am I entitled to all of this? And if I am entitled and he takes it back, then yes, there is, it's a big loss. But if I deal with this as if I am not entitled, and everything that he gives me, I show gratitude for. I'm grateful for being able to talk to you now. I'm sitting in an air-conditioned room now. I think 95% of the people in the world don't have that luxury. I don't know, 95%, I'm just making up a number. But all of these things, we develop the sense of entitlement. Once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a gift, we develop that sense of entitlement. He takes it back, and then all of a sudden we fall apart. And the believer does not have that sense of entitlement. He's taken everything that Allah gives him as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that should be grateful for. So count the blessings. I mean, if you are stuck at home in an air-conditioned room, not necessarily an air-conditioned room, but you have a shelter, you have like a roof on top of you, to count
You're better off than
blessings.
other people.
Of course. So start to count the blessings.
Alhamdulillah.
You really do this. Um,
Alhamdulillah.
you will be so grateful. And so I do believe that one of the stations that we need to visit nowadays is not only, sabr or resolve. It's not only patience, perseverance, resolve, or rida, acceptance, but it is also a station of shukr, gratefulness.
Thankfulness. Wallah. Gratitude.
Yeah.
True. Wallah, it does help a lot when we start focusing on the blessings that we're still enjoying and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or as the Prophet ﷺ taught us, to say every morning and every evening, Allahumma ma amsa bi min ni'matin aw bi ahadin min khalqika fa minka wahdaka la sharika lak falaka alhamdu wa laka shukr. We have a lot of blessings. We have variety of options. We're still much in a much better state than many people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us thankful people. Dr. Hatem, and I know that you have a very busy schedule, so I want to now focus on two types of questions that we're getting. We have some questions, medical questions. So we're going to ask for the sake of those who are asking these questions, and then we have also some fiqh questions. But before I get to that, just one last point: Ramadan. Subhanallah, I remember, I always, I have told you this before for our audience who are joining us. First time I met Dr. Hatem, Hafizahullah, was in the 90s. We don't look that old, but in the 90s, I was very, very young, and had the, privilege to pray behind him. And I still remember that Asr prayer, the longest Asr prayer I prayed in my life was behind Dr. Hatem, Hafizahullah, So and I remember Dr. Hatem praying a Taraweeh that was shorter than that Asr prayer, particularly in Dallas, Texas. SubhanAllah. So people right now are concerned, how could, it looks like, Ramadan will at least begin while we're in this state, and we will not be able to access our masajid or pray Taraweeh in Jama'ah. So, you have people now debating, some who are saying this can be the most special, or it can be a different Ramadan. It can be very special, and we can make it the best Ramadan ever. And then you have other people who are saying, no, this is not going to be the best Ramadan ever. This is going to be the hardest Ramadan ever. How should we, being now in the month of Sha'ban, how should we prepare ourselves as individuals, as families, and also as communities to Ramadan of this year? Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to be well and to be safe to witness and experience Ramadan.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Well, I guess the perception is depending on self-consciousness, and it's called the synthetic role of self-consciousness. Like, you make your own reality. So everybody has their own reality. And some people will have the best Ramadan, and some people will have the hardest Ramadan. But their circumstances are going to be pretty comparable. But you make your own reality, I guess. The idea here is that we have to remember that the Prophet ﷺ prayed only 2 to 3 nights in Jama'ah, Taraweeh in Jama'ah. The rest, he always prayed at home. And it is actually controversial whether Ramadan was Jama'ah, Taraweeh with the Jama'ah is better, or Taraweeh alone is better. Abdullah ibn Umar used to be of the opinion that you should pray it alone, and it's better alone, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ did most of the time. And I think the Malikis also believe that. But the idea here is, certainly the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever prays with the Imam until he finishes, he will get the reward of praying the whole night. So there are some hints that praying in the Jama'ah is maybe preferable. It seems that a good way to reconcile between all of this is to say that it varies, for some people who will not have the resolve to pray Taraweeh alone, praying in the Jama'ah basically will boost their energy and will encourage them and so on. So it's better for them to pray in Jama'ah. And for the people who have the resolve and, to pray the entire Taraweeh by themselves, and they can reflect better on the Quran, and they enjoy it more and they get more out of it, then it may be better for them to pray alone. But we have not gotten the chance to exercise those options. Allah gave us, maybe, we don't know. I hope that we will be able to pray Taraweeh and Jama'ah. Whether or not I expect it, that's a different story. I can always hope. But maybe Allah wants to give us the opportunity to exercise that option, of praying alone, and to see if we are actually, if we don't have the resolve, if we don't have the sincerity to do it alone, and it is just the sort of the group encouragement.
Yeah, but Dr. Hatem, this may be true for many of your students or students of knowledge and Huffaz al-Quran, but they may be able to enjoy praying at home by themselves or with their spouses and their family members. But for the average person, it's going to be very, very awkward for the person who's used to being there for Taraweeh from first rak'ah until witr prayer, praying behind their local imam, their favorite qari. Obviously it's going to be very tough, and we'll have to basically look for opportunities or maybe alternatives, obviously to encourage and motivate our community members, right, to keep keep up with the spirit of the month of Ramadan, and maybe do the best they can, right? Which brings us to a fiqh question about praying Taraweeh. Now, can people pray Taraweeh in their own congregation at home while listening to, we're not talking about Fard prayer, we're talking about Taraweeh, right? So could I be leading Taraweeh here in my room, right? And be, for instance, on some sort of be live on Zoom, and then have people around me in the neighborhood or in the community pray with me?
Oh, well, not according to the what? Not according to everybody, except maybe Sheikh Mohammed Siddiq al-Ghumari, rahmahullah, who had a treatise on this, and he's a contemporary scholar, and he's a good scholar, and certainly he cited a lot of proofs, but the rest of the scholars did not find them to be applicable. The most that we can say, because in the different mazahib, the distance between the rows, so the Hanbalis, for instance, they said that if you're outside the masjid, you have to be able to see the row in front of you. But none of them said that, you could, the Shafi'i say that the largest distance between one row and the other should be 300 arm lengths, and so even the most permissive madhab in this regard would not agree with praying in different places and everybody following the imam virtually, because that would result also in people praying behind people in different time zones, and that may result also in people, why do I need to pray behind, Hatem or Mohammed Faqih or whatever, when I can pray behind the Imam of Al-Haram, and then, so
yeah. If that was an option, I would definitely want to pray behind Sheikh Ahmed Al-Hudayfi.
Yeah, but anyway, the issue here is the most that we can say in this regard is if you are sort of different rooms in the same complex, and people are praying, but not from home. I don't know of anyone who said that. Sheikh Mohammed Al-Hassan did. Some people said that he said that he was citing the position of Sheikh Al-Ghumari as if he approves of it, but people did talk to him, and he denied that he ever said that.
He retracted. Yeah, he did not. He obviously did not say that people can pray, do vertical
Yes.
Jummah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Hatem, I will have to go through some of these questions real quick. Some of them are, medical questions, and some of them are more personal, and some of them are technical fiqh questions. We have a question about regarding couples who are expecting within the next few weeks. They're expecting children. What is the risks involved in them obviously delivering at a hospital? Should they be very concerned? Should they worry about the health of the child and also the mother? Are hospitals contaminated? What should they be preparing for?
I'd be actually more concerned if I was in my early pregnancy, even though we don't know what effects the virus may have on fetuses in early growth. But I think that people in their late pregnancy should not really be that concerned. Now, they could be concerned for themselves, but I don't think that they need to be concerned for the babies, because it does not seem that we cannot really say that there is vertical transmission from mother to baby. It's possible, but it has not been proven. And even if the baby contracts it from the mother after delivery, it does not seem that babies are having sort of any severe disease with it. So,
yeah, I mean, I actually read something not too long ago about a lady that delivered. She was positive. She delivered, and her baby was also tested positive. But both mother and child, for some reason, alhamdulillah, they did very well and they recovered, according to that article.
yeah. So I wouldn't really be concerned. Like for
Okay.
people in their late pregnancy, I wouldn't be concerned.
Okay. We have a question. Someone said that his father, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him a full and speedy recovery, tested positive. He is at home, self quarantined. Do you have any tips for our family with a member who tests positive, who's at home?
I guess that you need to stay away from people that are high risk. Stay away from all people in general, but particularly people who are high risk. When I was self-isolating here at home, I had people leave the food in front of the door and then go out and take it and come back, and so it's I think that you should try to be very careful and not transmit it to others, particularly if you have people who are high risk. And even if you transmit it to someone who's not high risk, they may transmit it to someone who's high risk. So particularly people who have their grandparents at home, people who have any elders at home, you need to be particularly careful. People who are older than 60 don't do very well with this disease. So that does not mean it is not a death sentence for anyone. But I'm just saying that it is worse for people who are older than 60. They've been saying more than 70, more than 65, more than 60, more than 55. They're saying everybody was more than 50.
Yeah, I mean,
but
there was a case in Italy of a lady who was 93 and recovered very well. Yeah, she was fine.
I actually heard of a case of someone who's 102 and recovered.
And 103, yes, as well. Yeah, that's the oldest. Yeah, yes, that's true. Subhanallah. ربك يخلق ما يشاء ويختار. نعم وقل لن يصيبنا إلا ما كتب الله لنا. I mean, really, some of these Quranic verses that we've been reading, will manifest themselves now, and I think I find the Quran to be very comforting. Just, response to many of these concerns that we have. There is a question regarding
the unpredictability. Actually, it is one of the signs of God's existence. The irrhythmicity and unpredictability of world events. They are irrhythmic and unpredictable. Someone is in control. That is not a natural phenomenon. Otherwise, everything would have been more rhythmic and more predictable.
SubhanAllah. There's a question regarding janazah. Actually, it's very relevant to me as well, in the case of this relative of ours that passed away yesterday. Obviously, we can't now go and attend janazah prayer. There's only a very limited number of people that are allowed to be there. So is this now, can Salatul Ghaib, a janazah prayer, a funeral prayer in absentia, be prayed? Can we say, okay, for the relatives or for the community members that so-and-so had passed away, we're about to bury this person, or the burial is taking place? There was even cases where people were live streaming the burial process. Can we do Salatul Janazah in our own respective areas, for someone who is being buried or who died and was buried, and we were not able to go to pray for them?
I would be flexible with this. In general, I don't personally, I don't believe that Salat al-Janazah will be prayed for everyone several times. But these are these are very unprecedented times. So the disagreement comes from the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did not really do Salat al-Janazah for many of the companions who died away from him. But he did it for al-Najashi, rahimahullah. So some of the scholars said that this was a khasisa, this was a peculiarity of the Prophet, and that these are the Malikis and Hanafis. They don't believe in Salat al-Janazah and Salat al-Ghaib being done for people. They believe that this was khasisa of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So it was a special privilege that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had.
Yeah.
And the Prophet ﷺ basically extended that as a to honor al-Najashi radiyallahu anhu.
Yeah. So then we have the Shafi'is and Hanbalis who believe that this actually applies that this is still applicable, and you could pray Salat al-Janazah for anyone. The Hanbalis have three different views. One is it's completely permissible for anyone, just like the Shafi'is. One is for people that did not have the Salat al-Janazah done for them. So if people die in a faraway land and we don't know if they pray Janazah for them, or we know that they did not pray Janazah for them, then we pray for them. And the third one, which is that it is to be done for people of great stature, like al-Najashi radiallahu anhu. The services that he, how he served the cause of the deen, and gave shelter to the Sahaba and so on and so forth. So it was not any person. The Prophet ﷺ may have wanted to honor al-Najashi in particular because of the great services. So if great mujahideen and the ulama and so on die far away, you could pray for them. Now, this is the fiqh. Yet in some of the madhahib, they allowed Salat al-Ghaib for everyone, and it is amr muhtamil. It could possibly be. We can't be really certain when there is a disagreement of this nature and we don't have something that is clear cut from the Prophet ﷺ. So whoever wants to pray janazah, to Salat al-Ghaib, let them pray it. These are unprecedented times, and it may give some comfort and solace to the hearts of people that they could participate even from a distance.
Just real quick on this topic, can we say the hadith of in Abu Dawood in the hadith of Usayd ibn Malik, Abu Dawood, the man from Bani Salama that came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, هل بقي علي من هل بقي علي من بر أبوي شيء أبرهما به بعد موتهما. The hadith, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith when said to him, نعم, yes, الصلاة عليهما. And if I remember correctly, one of the interpretations of this is that one should pray for his parents, including that includes Salatul Janazah. So can we say, that if an individual's parent dies and they are not able to go because, let's say in the case of someone that has multiple children or grandchildren, can we say at least for the children, grandchildren, it would be like recommended for them to do Salatul Janazah in absentia?
Yeah, I would, anyone who feels that he wants to do it, anyone feels that it is the deceased's right on him or that it will bring comfort to his heart, they should do it.
Dr. Hatem, barakallah fiik, jazakallah khairan. Can we keep you a little longer?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, you're fine. Okay. Alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. There is a question about lifestyle and dietary advice that you would share to help someone strengthen and boost their immune system.
Yeah, I'm not very good at dietary advice and lifestyle. I have a very sedentary lifestyle myself, so So
let me ask you a question, Dr. Hatem, if you don't mind, this personal question. When the result of subhanAllah, that morning when you received the result of your test, we spoke, and I think at that point you hadn't received it. But then you shared the news with us later that day, and it was like we couldn't sleep, literally. Sheikh Umar Sulaiman, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, and I were like texting back and forth. Have you heard from him? How's he doing? So it was really hard on us. So when you first heard the news, or you received the result, what did you do?
I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I actually was at work. So I got a phone call from the ER director to tell me that I tested positive. And then the CMO, the chief medical officer, called me and said, we're trying to find someone to cover you. That was 5 days after. And he asked me, when were your last symptoms? And I said, the day I was tested positive. If you notice me coughing every once in a while, that's something that I usually do. It's not because of COVID-19. But I didn't have symptoms for 14 plus days now, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
And even my symptoms, in the beginning when I had symptoms, it was dizziness and headache. I didn't even qualify to be tested, but because I'm a healthcare worker and I didn't want to give it to anyone, I got myself tested and they agreed to testing me. So for 5 days later, so he called me and he said that you tested positive. We can find someone to cover you based on our protocol, or, we could activate like a crisis clause because we can't find someone to cover you. And certainly it would not be a good idea to leave the hospital without someone who is trained in, rescuing children and neonates and so on and so forth. So I stayed. I continued to work. I just took extra precautions and wore my PPE stuff, not to protect myself, but to protect others from me. But I stayed. And continue to work. I didn't feel, it wasn't shocking or anything. And it's not bravery or anything, but maybe it is because I know a little bit more about the virus. That sort of fear of the unknown maybe causes more people to be a little bit more frightened by it, but it didn't frighten me that much, maybe because I knew more about it.
So people could actually have it and show no symptoms, and then it will leave their system, their body, or they may even transmit it to other people, and without knowing at all that they've ever had it.
Correct, absolutely. And many of the people around us do have it when they had like a sort of a random screening of the healthcare workers in Boston, 160 plus healthcare workers in different, hospitals in Boston, including 41 in Mass General, the Harvard hospital. They tested positive. They didn't have symptoms. They didn't know they're sick. It was just like screening for healthcare workers. And so, in one city, 160 hospital workers tested positive.
Do you think, for instance, increasing, I don't know, well, I guess I was trying to see if you started taking vitamin C, flaxseed, or anything that may, by the will and the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, could actually help boost the immune system. So, but I don't want to push any further, inshallah ta'ala.
No, I upped the honey in my diet. That's it. I just added more honey. That's the only thing I did. Yeah. So honey. Honey.
Okay. And is it true that honey does help with suppress cough?
It does, yeah.
Okay. So, okay. There is a question also about, again, it's a medical question regarding, the people who are asymptomatic, or people who may have mild symptoms, but they feel like this could be it. That they feel like they're really convinced that they have it. Should they request and demand to be tested, or should they not? When do you get tested? And I'm not speaking, morally. Ethically, when should one really get tested and demand to be tested, especially if they live in a state or in an area where they have very short, they're short on these kits. So, because I'm hearing from some people who are saying, oh, I had some symptoms and I didn't know what it was, and I got scared and I got tested and it came out negative. So a test kit has been wasted, basically.
No, basically, I was, I participated in another seminar today about the stimulus package. Muslims can apply for those grants or whatever loans, government loans, and so on. And if you want to exercise wara, and if you are scrupulous enough to exercise wara, just don't lie, say the truth. And if you are entitled, you will get the test. The same thing that you do on any application, just say the truth. And if you are entitled, if you are deserving, you will get the test, simply. So go but if you want to save yourself the trip, if that's what you're asking about, whether you should go or not, because you want to save yourself the trip. If they are not going to test you, they will likely not test you unless you have the symptoms, which are fever, respiratory symptoms, shortness of breath, cough, fever. And it is and/or, not necessarily and, it's and/or. So you have the symptoms and you have a history of exposure to someone with confirmed case or suspected. So two things need to be there for you to be deserving of the test or to get the test. And keep in mind that America is, 50 different states, and every state is a country by itself, and it has its own rules and all sort of regulations. So at least I'm talking from our experience here in New Jersey, and basically also the recommendations of the healthcare agent, recommendations of the CDC and whatever is being circulated within the medical community. So you need to have the symptoms and you need to have history of exposure. History of exposure to confirm their suspected case of COVID-19. And if you fulfill those conditions, you could go and get tested. They'll test you. And it would be a good idea to get tested, at least to know that you have it and, keep yourself from passing it on to others, particularly if you have elders at home or people who have chronic disease or something of that nature.
Somehow, when it comes to this whole thing, being tested, not being tested, it looks like some of us are not going to, really. I mean, let me just ask the question another way. If someone is tested and then it shows negative, that doesn't mean that they may not get it, right?
If someone is tested and the test is negative,
and then yes,
it means, is the test a good negative? No, it is not a good negative. It's called a good positive test, not a good negative test.
Okay.
Positive means that if you're tested and you're positive, you're likely positive. Yeah. Well, you're most likely positive. But if you're tested and you're negative, you could still be positive. Certainly, it is unlikely, but it does not rule out being positive. And
if it comes back positive,
negative, if you are actually negative now, you could become positive in 2 weeks, 4 weeks.
And if you obviously, if someone is positive, there is not much, right, that can be done until their symptoms get worse and they need to be hospitalized. But until then, they're just okay. So regular remedies, there is nothing, there's no medication for it. It's a viral infection. It's not bacterial. So
it's like the flu. You deal with it like the flu. Stay home. Keep yourself well hydrated. Do your like honey and dates and lax, whatever it is that you do regularly, your favorite things. And that's it. And stay home and wait it out. Once your symptoms become severe, certainly you need to go to the hospital. And if they admit you, then they will, those investigational treatments that they're looking into now, whether it's hydroxychloroquine, with or without Zethromax, and some other antiviral treatments that in the investigational phase. They may ask you to enlist to be part of a study, or they may give you the medicine without enlisting in a study if they deem it warranted. So anyway, for most of the people, you're just going to stay home and keep yourself hydrated, and that's it.
Okay, you recommended honey, multiple times, and there's a question about what about people who are diabetic? Should they be taking any honey?
Well, honey is not completely, they will certainly have to measure the number of carbs that they are recommended to consume. And they need to factor in the honey and subtract it from their allowance of carbs for their dietitian or their doctor.
Some people are saying, okay, should we expect this? Obviously, you may have spoken to infectious disease specialists, but should we expect this virus to die soon, to go away, just, disappear, as Trump said?
I don't know, but if you you have infectious disease people in your community, and they would be in a much better position to tell you about the virus and about all of the medical questions. I do have some knowledge of medicine because I'm a physician, but really I'm not an expert in infectious diseases. So they would know a lot more, and I always defer to them. I don't think that, I think that no one really thinks that the virus is just going to vanish anytime soon. I think that we will be, so until we find, so the best case scenario is vaccine. Second, the best case scenario would be medicine to treat it. And until, we discover a vaccine or an effective medicine, I don't see how we will go back to the baseline. So you find a vaccine, you find an effective medicine, or you develop herd immunity. And herd immunity is defined by half of your population having been exposed to the infection or having been infected at one point. Half of your population here in the US would mean somewhere around 160 million people. So that's what we're talking about. Discovering a vaccine, discovering medicine. Discovering medicine does not mean that, would not mean that this disease will not spread. It's discovering the vaccine that will curtail the spread of the disease. When you discover medicine, it will not be as frightening because you're not going to need you're not going to have all that severe disease and morbidity and mortality and so on. But certainly the best case scenario is a vaccine. Otherwise, we'll just have to wait for the herd immunity, which will take a long time, and a lot of people getting infected, and a lot of people also suffering severe disease, and a lot of people unfortunately passing away.
Should you mentioned hydrochloroquine? Should one request to be treated with it, and when should they ask for it?
So the hydroxychloroquine has been known forever for malaria, and people have used it forever. So it's not a new disease, it's not a new medicine. It's just a new indication. It's still investigational. People don't know exactly what happens, but if you mix it with Zithromax, it seems from some studies that are not really the greatest studies, but seems from some studies that they are helpful. So I think that if someone his condition is severe enough to be admitted to the hospital, they should put them on some medicine, whatever they are trying in that hospital. But that combination is one of the best that are out there: hydroxychloroquine plus Zithromax.
Okay, I was also asked, or it was brought to my attention, that the World Health Organization warned against the use of certain pain medications like ibuprofen for someone who has the coronavirus or COVID-19. What's your advice on that? Should people not use ibuprofen if they show any of these symptoms?
I didn't really read those studies. I heard this sort of like news, but I didn't really read those studies, so I can't really give you any educated advice.
Okay, because just from the quick basically article that I read, it was saying something about there are some studies that show the symptoms getting worse with those who use ibuprofen. So, but you don't know of any
it's not only ibuprofens, it's all NSAIDs. They say that you want to avoid non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I don't know the rationale behind it because I did not read the studies.
Okay, inshallah. Maybe we can further. We have an event, inshallah ta'ala, coming up on tomorrow night, actually, on the 4th. So yes, so we can inshallah ta'ala discuss these specific medical issues as well. There's a question regarding the verse قول الله تعالى في سورة الفرقان ما يفعل الله في سورة النساء ما يفعل الله بعذابكم إن شكرتم وآمنتم وكان الله شاكرا عليما. What are your thoughts about this verse?
Why would Allah torment you if you show gratitude and have faith, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most grateful and all-knowing? Why would Allah torment you if you show gratitude and you have faith?
So could this hold the clue to dealing with what some may perceive as a form of punishment or a trial?
But it is not necessarily, like it is difficult because it is not necessarily adhab. We didn't say that it is necessarily adhab. So in fact, the Prophet ﷺ said about the ta'un, which is, bubonic plague, but it is not necessarily, so there is a disagreement between the scholars whether a ta'un is a plague or ta'un is any epidemic. And so some of the scholars believe that the ta'un is any waba, epidemic. Some of the scholars believe that the ta'un is a specific disease, and these are the majority of the scholars, and it is likely a specific disease, but some of the rulings can be extended from a ta'un to any sort of widespread epidemic. And the Prophet ﷺ said that it used to be azab, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it rahmah for the mu'mineen, mercy for the believers. To the extent that Abu Ubaidah and Muaz, as you know, made dua to have it. So each one of them, Allahumma aqsim li'ali Muaz nasibahum minhu. Muaz ibn Jabal said, oh Allah, give us our share of this rahmah, of this mercy. And then he went home and he found his son وَقَدْ طُعِنَ, and he found that his son had the plague.
That was quite shocking for me when I read that. I remember a few years ago. Yeah.
So his son said to him, الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكَ فَلَا تَكُنَنَّ مِنَ الْمُمْتَرِينَ. He said to him, it's the truth from your Lord. So do not be of those who have doubt. And Mu'az said to his son, سَتَجِدُنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الصَّابِرِينَ. You will find me, inshallah, of the patient ones. The same response that Ismail gave Ibrahim when he told him that, I see in the dream that I'm slaughtering you. So then shortly thereafter, after his son died, Mu'az himself had the plague and died. I'm not trying, and we're not there, and we probably, and it does not mean that everyone, it does not mean that everyone needs to invoke this upon themselves. But again, at the same time, Mu'adh in particular, because some people, make like fun of some of the brothers, like some of the brothers from Tabligh al-Dawah, for instance, and people talk about how reckless they are and, their misunderstanding of the concept of yaqeen and the concept of tawakkul and all of that stuff. But it, I think that you could have your opinion, but don't be certain, and don't.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't want to judge anyone, but some people are really concerned. They're saying it's one thing for you to contract something and deal with it yourself and suffer. It's another, it's a totally different story when you are actually transmitting it to someone else, and.
Yeah, no, and my position is that the correct position in this regard was not Mu'adh's position. It was actually Amr ibn al-As's position, despite the huge difference between Mu'adh and Amr ibn al-As in terms of their, status. Yeah,
No.
and between Abu Ubaidah and Amr ibn al-As in terms of their position and status. But Amr ibn al-As, told them to disperse, and he took them to the mountain tops, and he told them to disperse, self-isolate.
That was genius. He
Yeah,
saved. Yeah.
for
رضي الله عنهم أجمعين.
particularly. Yeah. So yes, I agree that this is the proper response. This is what we need to do.
Social distancing, like Amr ibn As رضي الله عنه recommended.
But again, at the same time, let us be also merciful, and let us be kind and be respectful of other people. You could talk to them about their sort of their error, but don't don't be too aggressive. Don't be too aggressive, because we are masakeen, all of us. We are masakeen.
Dr. Hatem, I know this has been a very long day for you, and it's a very tough day. If I can just, if we can go on for 7 more minutes, inshallah ta'ala, I promise. But I need to tell our audience that, inshallah, tomorrow night we have a special program as well with a pulmonologist, an infectious disease specialist, and an ER doctor to discuss all of these medical issues. So some of the questions that we did not get to, we're going to get to it, inshallah ta'ala. So tomorrow at 8 p.m., join us, inshallah azza wa jal, for a special event here at the MIC live channel, inshallah ta'ala. There was a question I'm asking.
We wanted to go back to,
sure.
So we're saying that this is not necessarily azab. The azab is the azab of the akhirah, or the loss of faith in this dunya. Anything else that may be a hardship, like difficulty, hardship, distress, it's a test, and you may pass it. So it is not azab. So good, righteous people that are grateful and shakartum amantum and have faith, they can be subjected to the same tests of hardship and distress. And that does not mean that they don't have faith and they're not grateful. They could be extremely grateful and extremely faithful and suffer from leprosy, or the worst disease that you can think of. And that would not be azab, it would be just a test.
There's a question on behalf of those who are in the forefront, in the front line, dealing with this disease, medical professionals, and it's a fiqh, question. What do they do with their prayers, right? So some of them are working long shifts, obviously, dealing with this, coming in and out of the gear, as you know, it's very difficult. So what advice do you have for them with regards to their salah and wudu? The other day, there was a question from an ER doctor who said, well, making wudu and doing, rinsing our mouth and washing the nose or even the face can be very risky. So can I skip that? And obviously, istishaq and, madmada is sunnah according to the majority of the scholars. So what advice do you have with regards to their prayers? Can they combine prayers or not? And with regards to wudu, should they make wudu and just avoid, rinsing their mouth and, close their eyes, or should they do tayammum? So.
Okay, so as far as the prayers, for most of us, we can pray on time and we can make wudu. For those of us who are like when there is a true need to basically to keep your PPE on, your personal protective equipment on, and if you take it off, you'll have to throw it away, and scarcity of resources, you don't have enough of those. So if there is a true need, then because of this need and because of this hardship, you may combine the prayers. So that would be the first step, because combining for a hardship is the Hanbali position. So it's at least the authorized mu'tamad position of one of the four madhahib to combine for hardship. And the Hanbalis mentioned different types of hardships. You know, you fear for your, like for the chef, for instance, if he fears that his food will be burnt, or the baker or something, they can combine the prayer for this. So, you know,
obviously this is a much more critical
yeah.
situation here. Yeah.
So combining the prayers would be one thing that you could do. Now the next thing is to skip madmada.
So just to kind of so you're saying that for doctors, physicians who find it very difficult to come out of their gear, or who are working long shifts under these circumstances, they may combine their prayers in advance. So pray dhuhr, pray asr with dhuhr, and pray maghrib maybe with isha, delayed or prayed in advance. So does it make a difference whether?
If there is hardship, you could pray both in advance, defer both, or advance both. That is fine.
Okay.
Given there is hardship existing or expected, there has to be some degree of hardship, because for the doctors that are able to pray on time, and Salah kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. Salah was made obligatory on the believers at specified times, designated times. So we don't want to make light of the times of the Salah, but if there is hardship, then that concession can be used until the hardship is removed. And if you need to be in your PPE and you don't want to waste it, you don't want to take it off, you don't want to waste it, or you're not going to be able to make wudu, or you are like bombarded by a lot of patients if you're in the ER, and if you have a lot of patients coming in and so on, then these are all circumstances that would warrant the concessions.
Okay.
Yeah. So now the next thing is the skipping the madmada and istinshaq. That's not a big deal. I mean, I'm Hanbali, so it bothers me a little bit, but for the majority of the scholars, that is not obligatory. Actually, for non-Hanbalis, it is not obligatory, at least in wudu. And of course, the Hanafis consider it obligatory. But anyway, so for wudu, at least, it is sunnah for the non-Hanbalis, so they may, so it is fine. You may skip the madmada and istinshaq. Now, the issue of tayammum, well, everybody has to be honest and candid with themselves. If they're really pushed into this, then that's a concession that is there, but they really need to be pushed to make into it. Because tayammum, we move from wudu to tayammum if there is no water, or if the water will cause harm.
Yes.
And
and in some
yeah. So if there is real harm in your assessment, in terms of like the taking off the PPE and having to waste it, and maybe not being able to find the attire, the same gown and mask and so on, then in this case it may be permissible. But everybody has to be conscientious.
So you would say that you will leave it up to the individual, make your best judgment. If you
Correct.
feel, if you're afraid that making wudu could actually put you or your patients at risk, then then make tayammum. If you can make wudu, but and you have the space and the time to do it, make it. But you may have skipped basically rinsing your mouth and okay. Jazakallah khair. This is very clear. This has been wonderful. Last question, just a bit personal.
And you can trim your beard also, like I did.
Okay. All right.
For the mask, for the N95, if you have to trim your beard, trim it to the extent that you could fit the mask. And if they tell you shave it, then a goatee would be your next step before you shave it. But if you must shave it, then you can shave it. But just so trim, goatee, shave in this order.
Okay, trim,
Goatee,
and then shave,
shave.
depending on the gear that you're basically
That you're
the
required to
physician is.
wear, and that yeah,
Sure.
the PAPR, which is the purified air, the thing that you wear, like
Yeah.
the hood.
So I finally figured out why I was like having, I thought you changed a little bit, or you became younger, but then now I realized what it was.
Oh, yeah.
It took me.
Yeah, no.
May Allah bless you, Dr. Hatem. I really appreciate you taking the time and the effort and joining us tonight. Thank you also for destigmatizing this whole thing of being COVID-19 positive. Some people feel like this is something that they have to basically hide or not share, as if it's so. Jazakallahu khairan. Our thoughts and prayers with you and your colleagues, every physician and healthcare professional out there. We ask Allah to preserve you and protect you all and your family members. By the way, has any one of your family members been affected by
No, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you and protect you all. Jazakumullah khairan. We really appreciate you joining us. We will inshallah ta'ala continue to reach out to one another. Keep us in your dua, inshallah. Any final thoughts or words of advice, please share with us.
Have husn al-dhann billah, so have good thoughts of Allah.
Maintain hope and expect the best from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. He is compassionate subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa rahmati wasi'at kulla shay. He says, so we do have good expectations inshallah ta'ala. Allahumma rahmataka arju ya hayyu ya qayyum fala takilni أو أحدا من إخواني إلى غيرك طرفة عين. جزاك الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Please do not forget, once again, we do have a special program tomorrow night. Join us inshallah. We'll have 3 doctors with us, a pulmonologist, that is a respiratory and lung doctor, an infectious disease specialist, and an ER doctor. They will talk about their experience and keep us posted, inshallah ta'ala, with the latest when it comes to COVID-19. May Allah preserve you and protect you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessed month for us and allow us to experience the month of Ramadan. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.